In this video, I want to talk about the idea of spirituality and what it means in our contemporary society. I think historically religion has been the main driving force behind our understanding of spirituality, but in recent history the two have been divided, and I think that's a good thing. I think that it shows that spirituality is something more innate, more fundamental to human experience, and doesn't necessarily relate to the structures and power systems and dogmas that are associated with religion. I think that we could say that spirituality is to religion what state control or government is to freedom or liberty. I think there's a real correlation there between the two ways of viewing the world. I think that in general, a government or a state has some degree of influence in terms of maintaining our rights and our individual freedoms, but often that can become corrupted, exploited, and governments can commit atrocities, as has been seen across the world from the beginning of government systems. The same is true with religion. I think spirituality at its core is what we are striving for, but often within a religious structure, that system can become also corrupted or distorted or become simply dogma, and it can lose the essential qualities that we would understand as spirituality. So what are those essential qualities? I think that what it comes down to is a philosophy of benevolence. I think that is the key underlying core of what most people would consider the basis of spirituality. So what do I mean by that? I mean essential qualities like the golden rule, the idea of do to someone else as you would want to be done to you, the idea of treating others with compassion, treating everything with compassion. I would extend it to, so even the natural world, non-human animals, the whole thing. It's about this sense of having respect and reverence for that which is not directly beneficial to you. It's things that are beyond you, but you still have a respect and a sense of worth to those things. In fact, the word worship comes from the idea to give worth, to give value to something. So I also think that there are different aspects to our idea of spirituality. Spirituality can also have this sense of an understanding of another level to the reality in which we live. It doesn't necessarily have to have that, but most of the time people who would say they are spiritual are interested in this other aspect, this other dimension of experience, of consciousness, of reality. And I think that's very interesting too. We have these two different aspects to spirituality. You have the interpersonal aspect, where it's one person dealing with the people around them, how we interact, how we treat others, how we treat the world. That's one aspect. That's the benevolence aspect of spirituality. But then there is also this aspect that deals with areas that are related to my work and the out-of-body experience and different areas like that. So I think when we start to move into that area, it becomes a lot more of a subjective situation. It's a situation where you could even call it a subjective science. That is somewhat how I see it. When I do my own work, I know that I'm dealing with things that can't always be analysed and categorised and looked at in a laboratory in the way that maybe I would like, so that we could get solid evidence for every single aspect of spiritual experience. That's very difficult to do. I've heard it described as trying to catch lightning in a bottle, and I think there's some truth to that. I do still think that we have to do our absolute best to try and understand these things in a scientific way, but I also think that we have to understand that there's a certain degree that is subjective, that we can't fully understand in an ordinary, everyday sense using science and the normal tools that are available to us. So that aspect I see as trying to use something like the scientific method, but use that in a way that helps us understand and explore something that's far more subjective, that's far more a personal experience. When we have mystical experiences, unusual experiences that suggest to us that there is a spiritual dimension to the world. We can't prove that often, we can't fully understand what all of that means. It might take a lifetime of exploration to really come to terms with what that spiritual core of ourselves really means. And I think that that's essentially what this approach means, where we use the scientific method, but we're dealing with something that cannot be analysed in many ways by science. We're trying to find the best avenue, the closest to what might actually be true, or this is the approach that I take. So in that essence, again, I divide what I do from religion in the sense that I'm trying to strip away beliefs. I'm trying to get to the core of spirituality, and I'm trying to get to the core of what it means to be human, what it means to experience the world in this spiritual way. Without doing that, I think all of these types of experiences become just a collection of information or a collection of events in our lives. But when we start to explore their deeper meaning and their implications, the interconnected nature of the reality that they suggest, all of that brings everything together and gives us a core experience of ourselves. It helps us to connect to a more authentic sense of ourselves. And I think that is really what spirituality is about. It's about that exploration of these two aspects of reality, these two aspects of our inner experience, the nature of our consciousness, the nature of who we are. And when we bring those together, that is really when we start to realize ourselves. We start to move towards concepts like self-realization, or a very grand term, enlightenment. I prefer not to use that because very few people actually will ever claim to be enlightened. But what we can say is we can get to a point where we feel attuned, we feel at one with ourselves, we feel at one with the nature of the world around us, we feel authentic to ourselves. And I think that is a far better way of putting it. So it's when we bring all of those aspects together. So really that's how I see spirituality, and I see these experiences that I have, like out-of-body experiences, and many other people have, and all these other kinds of experiences. They are ways to gain direct personal knowledge, personal understanding of those other levels and the meaning that they might have to ourselves. And from that, we can grow as human beings. So I think there's a definite sense of growth and progression and development inherent to what I would understand as spirituality.